Morning, San Diego.
That was perfect right when we went live. What's up, guys? John Sentes here, Cass Kreitlow, Cutternation podcast number 98. We're creeping up on a hundo. Super exciting. I'm really happy that we've been able to push, for more podcasts, found an easy platform to do this, as well as connect with some of our fellow Instagram famous instructors, like our man here, Juan Rivera from Antonelli Baseball. Juan, how you doing, buddy? How's everything going? Why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners on the podcast and just let everybody know who you are?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on. I mean, really, really cool for the invite. Famous, I would probably use that term loosely, but I'll accept it. But my name is Juan Rivera, as you see right there. I am the pitching coordinator for Antonelli Baseball. If you haven't seen anything about Antonelli Baseball, it's basically ran by Matt Antonelli, who is actually a former San Diego Padre. So you probably have some good clientele on your end that will follow the Padres. Former San Diego Padre, he decided to run his own program up here, and I got in connections with him, and we've kind of hit it off since then. And that's basically what I've been doing. I've kind of been his right-hand man here for about 3 years at this point, and cover everything pitching on his end for his organization. But then I do a lot of things on my own, which he's been very kind to let me do that as well. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
Right on. Where are you at right now?
We are based in Danvers, Massachusetts, which is about 25 minutes north of downtown Boston.
So you're in the thick.
In the thick.
So help me out with how that's going. Because over here in California, we've got some weird, different things going on right now. So, could you help me with the timeline on how things are going, and then where you're at right now, what phase you're in, and what's going on?
Okay, so right now within the state, we're technically reopened, quote unquote, but there are still just a number of different regulations that we have to abide by. Just to keep this kind of baseball wise, in order for me to coach, I still have to have a mask on. We still have to do the whole social distancing thing. There are certain towns that force players to wear masks, even when they're hitting as well, which has caused a lot of issues on this end. We have to have certain things like hand sanitizer available at all times, social distancing within the dugout. We, as an organization, have set up tents outside of the dugout so we can abide by that as best as possible. But Massachusetts in particular, we're definitely steer more towards the liberal side of things here. So I feel like it's, in terms of the numbers and just COVID in general, it's doing okay. We're making all the right decisions as a state, particularly being so close to New York, where Yankee Stadium is legitimately 3.5 hours from my apartment, right? That's nothing, right? So particularly being so close to even New Rochelle, which was a hotspot for a while, that's only 2.5 hours away. I feel like we've done good things in the state. It's just been really difficult, at least in my perspective, baseball wise, to really get things done properly. Still can't train inside. Everything has to be outside still. So luckily we've had great weather so far since June has started. We've been able to be outside since June, the first Monday of June. So we've had really, really good weather. We've probably only gotten washed out, less than a handful of times, which has been at least a huge blessing in terms of being able to work, train, play games, practice, all that type of stuff. But from March 17th, through the first Monday of June, it was basically shut down, stay at home advisory, can't do anything, public parks closed down, nothing at all. You can basically only leave your house if you were getting quote unquote essentials. And I mean, that's basically grocery, pharmacy, and that was it. That was basically it.
Yeah, gnarly. It's similar to over here. We opened and then we closed back down. We're closed back down right now. And I'm just interested, because I feel for you guys, especially, you being up in the Northeast, how much time do we have before weather becomes an issue?
It's going to be a problem.
Right?
I truly believe it's going to be a problem. I'm very fearful of what's going to happen, around here starting in November, right? We basically have all of September, all of October ahead of us. And then to take this into the business sense, it's my girlfriend makes fun of me because I'm hoarding money. Legitimately just hoarding money, because it's I potentially, since I'm self-employed, right? Potentially, I may not have anything to do from November 1 through March 30th, right? Like nothing. So I'm preparing for that to the best of my ability right now. But I am like inside pretty pessimistic of how the winter is going to be in the Northeast.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I hear you. It's interesting, because I see a lot of, I see so much of what's happening, with your situation and where it's going to go, and the inside outside, like we're saying, is how do you do, the inside part without a clear understanding of what's happening, how we deal with it, and
Right.
I'm just not seeing a unified message with anything. It's just so broad and vague with what's happening. So I feel for you, man, because man, oof.
It's tough. The nice part about this state, at least in particular, it's like, here are the rules, follow them. That's it. So it's like kind of straightforward. This is what we're doing, and you just work with it. And at least for me, as you know, I own my own business, and I'm with Matt, who also owns his business. Having those just strict, like, this is what it is, it at least gives you that lead time to start thinking of, more creative ways to bring in revenue to the business, and still supply a good product to our clients, which, baseball wise.
Yeah. So what are some of the ways that you've kind of, adapted over there? And what, I know that you probably can't see your guys in the same situations. I see you are able to get on the field a little bit sometimes and,
Yep.
throw off a mound, but what else are you doing?
So, like I said, ever since the first Monday in June, it's been pretty normal. Like, you just kind of have to abide by certain rules, but being able to get onto the field was fine up to that time. Just like everybody on social, I tried to do the whole virtual training thing, which personally, like, was not for me at all. Like, I am like eyes on you, break you down type person. And it was at least very difficult for me at the very beginning to do the whole virtual thing, until I sat down and said, well, the best way to do a virtual thing, at least in my opinion, is to program it. So I decided to program it because I have a very individualistic mindset when it comes to athletes, where sometimes I go into sessions where I don't really have a plan. It's like your body tells me, what do we got to do today? You know what I mean? So the whole virtual thing really took me for a loop. But that was really like step one. Outside of that, I really tried to communicate and touch as many people as possible through Instagram, YouTube, any type of social media, you name it. That was like my number one goal. Even if it ended up being free, I just thought the more free info and the more free conversations I can give out from March to June is going to play in the future. So that's kind of like, that was my mindset going in.
Yeah, we totally had a similar thing. We were just talking, we're doing once a week podcast. We're doing 4 or 5 a week for months, 2 months or something like that.
For
right?
sure.
So,
for sure.
Just with the same exact idea. And I'm looking back, I'm like, dude, this was such a blur. We had Eugene Bleecker on after we had somebody else on. And it was like, we just sat back and listened to Bleecker just tell us how it was. And I haven't even listened to it. It's like, we have so much content. I had a guy, John doesn't even know this. We had somebody approach us the other day, came in and checked out what we're doing and called me up. And he's like, I don't know that I'm able to financially do it as much as possible, but what can I do with limited time at your space? I'm like, I'm having this conversation all the time. We have 98 episodes of podcasts,
it's awesome.
right? Right.
It's awesome.
And I heard Robbie Rowe talking about it yesterday, whatever his post was, where he was going on a rant, how these kids just ask him questions like, how do I throw harder? What do you mean, how do I throw harder? Look at one of my posts. Right. And
right.
So it also is right. So there's an unbelievable amount of information out there right now, a lot of really good information. And I think the hardest part is that there's a ton of really good information. And that's probably it's only a part, but it allows, I'm going to throw this idea out there because I've thought about this and I don't know how much it gets into the baseball world, but I'm a huge Jordan Peterson fan. Everybody hears me talk about it. And he's talked about creating something that certifies you through your views on YouTube. So like there would be some sort of every single YouTube thing that you would watch, right? The goal would be to have some sort of, hey, how did you comprehend this? Right? Just like what the AR tests and when you're reading, did you guys have to do that as a kid?
No, I never did, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, you had to read a book and you have a 5-question test after it if you got it, right? And it's like the same exact thing. Do you display competence in this conversation right now? And to be able to compile that, I mean, one of the questions I was going to ask you is like, what are some of your influences, right? And so we've created our ability to have an influence on people by just continuously putting out content, right? And if you're following us, you can hear that message, right? But anyway, I'll throw it back to you. Like, who are some of these people that were influencing your conversation, whether it was 10 years ago and who taught you this, or whether it's who's informing your opinions now?
Oh, for sure. That's actually like a really loaded question. And my answer is like incredibly broad because I have so many conversations throughout the day. I like try to absorb so much from everybody. That's always been like my mindset, just to kind of like be a sponge where like I can't directly point at somebody and be like, that's my inspiration, or a handful of people, right? Most of us have 4 or 5 people that we can.
Is there like a timeline?
Timeline of like when this began?
So for example, I always say like Ron Wolford, I was coached Ron Wolford's stuff in college. That was the first time I realized that I was being trained a certain way, right? And then I got on the top velocity train and I'm educated myself on what driveline he's doing, right? And like core velocity belt, like I just keep on building on it like that. But those
just add the layers on there. Yeah, I would say like when I was 14, my high school coach was the first guy that I said in my own head, like, holy smokes, like this is it. Right? Like this is it. And then how can I add the layers on top of it? And it's just really just listening to as many people as possible, whether you like them or not. Like you just have to stay, in my opinion, you just got to stay here. I'm the type of person that's never like super high or super low. And I love listening and absorbing. And I get made fun of sometimes because I'll just shut up and not say a word for an hour. And they're like, do you have anything to say? I'm like, no. Actually, that was awesome. Whatever you guys just did over the last 45 minutes. Like, I'm just like taking it all in. And I love, like, I'm a weirdo. I love different genres. I like talking to yoga instructors and I like talking to health and fitness people. And I like talking to doctors and I'll talk any subject at all and always try to drive it back into baseball. Like, for instance, I went on this kick, at least during the stay-at-home advisory, where I reached out to yoga instructors for like basically a full month and I did Zoom lessons with them. And in my mind, I said, okay, I'm going to go through these motions and movements. And every movement that I went through, I said, now can I throw from this movement? And like, that's, Cass, I follow you. You do the whole jump rope thing, right? That whole like body flow aspect of just life and just being a human being in general. You're taking jump rope and you're somehow blending this into how I could become a better pitcher, right? That's how at least I perceive it when you post stuff like that.
Spot on.
Yeah, and like I love doing like that. So like I don't have like one person. And this may come off sappy. If there is one person, it is 1 trillion million % my parents. Period. End of story. Like it is my parents, the relationship they have with each other. They've been in love and married my entire life, so I'm very fortunate there. And just the inspiration that they give me to just kind of provide that to like my daughter and then even trickle that into my players, they're by far my number one. After that, it's just a big blend of a million people just coming right into the dome piece. That's basically it.
Coming right into the dome piece.
That's
that
awesome.
was good.
Yeah.
By the way, I do not jump the rope, right?
You can't. I've stared at it.
So let me explain it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was just about to say, you need to sit back for a second because he's about to get the notepad out. Get the notepad out.
Should I get ropes, John?
Sure, man. I'll fill in. Go grab the rope.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating because I don't know.
Okay, so it's the Weck method. There's a guy named David Weck. We've had him on the podcast. He talks about movement. He's got a sick gym in downtown San Diego. But he's just all about body flow, movement, energy, free space, momentum, locomotion. He comes it down to locomotion, right? And if you look at locomotion and how movement patterns go into it, then you can really see that it creates, like, you can see the start and stop of energy, right? Where when energy comes through, you're putting the ropes around your body. If you have the ropes on this side of your body actually counterbalances on its own because of its own balance system to the opposite part of the foot on the outside. So it's just a thing where you start learning how to balance inside of locomotion, and you can see massive things. Sorry, Cass,
Isn't that fascinating?
Oh, it is.
I'm going to go up and down because it's easier.
And you should have seen. It doesn't do it, Cass. It doesn't do it that way.
Oh, it doesn't do it that way? Okay.
No.
All right. Okay, so if you jump the rope, okay, you go up when the rope goes down, okay? And when you don't jump it, you go down with the rope, like you would if you were going to run somewhere, right? So when I'm running, I should be putting weight into my legs with my upper half, right? So it's this breathe down into your leg and use, because there's a recoil there, right? So if you just relax your shoulders down, they come back up. So you time that movement, and the ropes and the WEC method propulsors like inform the body how to do this. So, and then once you like understand where the loops, like the figure 8s are, right? This is hitting, right?
Yeah.
This is hitting, and then this is throwing, right? Just an overhand pattern. So if we go here, I can time and play with figure 8s around my body. It's also really helping me like understand opening and closing my shoulders. So if you just do an overhand pattern like this, most players are going to do it like this. And also, by the way, every single time I give them a rope and I say, do an underhand pattern, they watch me and they do an overhand pattern. I would say like 9 out of 10 guys.
Oh, that's
easy.
Interesting.
So it's think of all of the levels of this, right? If you get good at this skill, right? So I'm to the point where I know where the rope is. I think I have all the tricks, even though I'm fumbling right now, but I have most of the idea. So I can break it down as a coach. I understand what I'm trying to do. For them, they just need to put in the reps and the movement will start to reveal itself. Like that's the whole point, is you just discover where these lines are. And it's no different than discovering where your arm should be when you throw, right? So you're creating a level, you're mapping the body with these tools. And there's an infinite number of ways that you can do a figure 8 around your body, right? And that's movement in general, right? So, we see people comparing it to, the javelin throw, right? We have the comparisons of golf and tennis. And it's like, hey, like I just relate to, like you already said, like anything. I can draw a parallel with anything because it's all the same things. And that's why the rope is so fun. Go ahead.
I remember the first year I was with Matt, he would like look at me when we're doing private sessions and he's like, that is the wackiest pitching session I've ever effing seen. And like just how you as well are the same boat. I feel like, and this is why I like following like your content in particular, is because you kind of have that wacky type of, hey, that looks cool. How can I put that into pitching? It's like I have the same type of mindset. I just remember him looking at me. That was the coolest, weirdest, wackiest thing I've seen. I can't believe it worked. I'm like, I learned it from X, Y, and Z. And I felt like when I was learning it, I said, wow, I can definitely correlate this into pitching. Let's freaking do this thing. And I think it also it helps stimulate the players' minds too, like bringing different stuff like that in there. So it's not this monotonous type of atmosphere, particularly for the kids who may not be like super primetime elite kids. Those kids like need stuff like this. I think everybody needs stuff like this, but we have players, I'm sure you have players as well, who come in, have a great baseline, are super focused, and you can give them the most mundane workout and they're going to be freaking laser focused in that and get it done. But then you get kids who have a lesser baseline and they just need to move better and do different things better. And you have to get their body moving in different ways, adding weird, what is conventionally weird things like that into their routine is going to pay so many dividends down the line, in my opinion.
I say it all the time. It's the biggest issue I have, right? Because this isn't cool looking. This isn't like, This doesn't get them going like boom. But I mean, this is the fun thing about it is it gets me like, I'm showing them emotion through their movement. I'm like, do you understand what this does when you see somebody do that? Think of what you think about when I walk up to you, staring into your soul, rolling my shoulders in an underhand pattern. Like, you know that looks completely different than this guy. Hi, how's it going? Right? It's
for sure. I love it.
Helpful for them to make these connections. And I was just making this comment the other day. I literally just said this last night. I haven't had kids for a long period of time, right? And this is where our model, I want the country club stuff. I want them to be there, like live at our place for years, because the things that I can bring people take a long time to develop, right? This awareness, the emotional, cognitive, psychological awareness that we can bring to kids. I need time with them.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I do second that. I think I'm very fortunate to have been here for 3 years where it's like basically the same 200 players every year, you know, and like 200. We might we have about like 200 to 220, somewhere in that window. And then you sprinkle in, you know, new kids every year. Like I'm just going to make up a number, 10% players leave. We get a new batch of 10% coming in. You know, just that typical transition. But just to back what you're saying, the biggest benefit that I have is that after these 2 years that they're with me, when I bring the weirdest, wackiest, most insane things that they think is weird, they trust me. They're like, okay, like they just trust. They're like, Coach Juan has told me X, Y, and Z in the past. It's been weird. It's worked. So I'm going to take this weird stuff. I'm going to apply it too. You know, but having those guys there for a long period of time is very beneficial. That trust factor and the human aspect of just trusting what's in front of you is big.
Well, and I'm thinking about, I feel like I'm always trying. So I feel like we are always trying to put ourselves in their perspective. I hear John just saying yesterday, I want to give them what I did not have. Right. And I want them to realize what they have and what they can do. And as soon as I start talking about, hey, we're going to do these ropes, and I see the defenses come up and I see how they handle these things, because they're uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to learn these new things, right? But I also recognize that is so critical to their development. Introducing new stimulus into their training is so important. And you think about, okay, what happens to really young children? Right? Everything is new now. Everything is a brand new experience. You know, so it's like you by 10 years old, have your parents caught you up on all of their favorite movies that are not rated R yet, right? Seriously, those things, right? Yeah. And it's like that starts waning as soon as they become self-conscious. As soon as they're like, oh, that girl's cute. Wait, what? I like, right? Or that guy's cute, whatever it is, right? And it's like that self-consciousness starts making you scared of learning new things. And it's so freaking obvious. And it's hard for me to not get jacked up about it, because I'm like, bro, you got to get this right now. This is so critical for you. Because if this is levels beyond this, right? If you understand how to do the ropes and you understand how to do the pulsers, then you don't need the ropes and you don't need the pulsers and you don't need me coaching you. Right. And so that's like my ultimate goal is, I was going to say this earlier, and then I think I can jump off my soapbox here, but I'm a communication major. I have a degree in communicating. Okay. And I recognize just how poor we all typically communicate. Right. And so I can have the best intentions. I can say it so perfectly. Right. But they might be having a bad day and they're distracted by something else. Yeah. Right. And rightfully so. Right. Because life happens and real things are on people's minds that they're dealing with. Right. And so every kid that comes to me, I don't want to fill that stress and anxiety up. I want to take out of that bucket. Right. And so if me talking to them is adding to that, I want to find as many ways as possible to not do that. Right. And so my training, that's my goal, is to be able to create programs that kids learn, and then I can walk away from and watch them ask me questions.
I love
watch
it.
them ask for feedback. So, and they feel comfortable and confident to do that, right? That they don't need me by their side all of the time, telling them what to do. right? They can think on their own. So.
No, that's I 100% agree. I think one of the biggest problems in like today's world, at least baseball wise, is that a kid will have a bad outing and he'll go run right to his parents and say, I need to go see Johnny Cass. Like, I need to go see Johnny Cass after a bad outing. They have a good outing, doesn't cross their mind, right? But they have a bad outing, and it's like ultimately, I want you coming to me as like a checkup. Like, is everything moving great? All right, cool. Like, it's like a doctor's checkup, just to make sure everything's clicking properly. That's like the ultimate goal. Obviously, it takes years to get there, but I think that's the biggest problem nowadays, that kids will have a bad outing and then automatically just, I need to go do a lesson with whoever that person is. I just need to go do one, you know?
Right. It's having the sense of urgency forever and having a big long picture.
For sure.
John talks about often how long it takes to just get going. I always think of Joe Rogan talking about just being in shape. He's like, once you get over 30 or once you get over 40, if you get out of shape, it is so unbelievably uncomfortable to get back in shape. It's like, don't do it. Just stay in shape. And it's the same exact thing for arm health. It's so uncomfortable to get your arm back in shape. But once you just are consistent with it, it's so easy to keep it going. Right? Like it really is.
Agreed.
And we've all had these moments where we're like, gosh, my arm has felt good for months and months and months and months. And but basketball's coming up. I'm going to take some time off. Or, I was a multi-sport athlete. So I had a lot of kids, and I'm from the middle of nowhere. I had kids who just like didn't want to play baseball. It's all the time. What do you tell kids? Like, how would you answer this question? I had a kid who's a quarterback. He's like, what should I do during football? Should I continue to throw a baseball or should I just focus on football? He's a quarterback. What do you tell that quarterback?
Man, there are like a ton of variables that come into play there. A lot of, just right on top of my head, schedule is the first thing that pops in my head. Do you have a schedule? Is it formulated? Is it structured to the point that that every Monday through Saturday, this is what's going to happen no matter what? And if you really have a passion for football, then we work around that. If your passion is baseball, then you got to put, like, I just like football, I'm playing for fun, but yes, we need to throw a freaking baseball. So I think goal setting is very important when it comes to that conversation with a kid. And that's kind of like the first thing that I ask them is, well, what's your goal baseball wise? And then we try to take their goal baseball wise and weigh it with their goal football wise, and then work from there and try to individualize what we're going to do with that kid. And again, other variables, size.
Here, let me add one
history.
variable. So I assume that because they're a quarterback, that they're going to be pretty committed to football. Like, assume that this kid is the starting quarterback on his varsity football team. So he's got to be invested. So I'm talking about like, okay, we have this weird world where I love baseball, I love football. I'm really good at quarterback, but I'm dominant on the mound. I'm Jameis Winston. What do I do?
Well, if he's physically fit enough, we have to find the windows to still get our baseball stuff in. If we're talking about, in my opinion, but if we're talking about a 14, 15-year-old kid who may not have the motor skills or the strength and conditioning to sustain both a football and baseball workout or training, then we would have to just figure it out and kind of, that's probably the type of kid you push towards the weight room. Be like, okay, fantastic. It's okay to tell a 14-year-old, I think it's okay to tell a 14-year-old, like, okay, just screw baseball for right now. Like, get yourself conditioned enough where in the future we can start doing multiple things at once. But it is a difficult conversation to have. But I think size, weight, height, injury history, there are a lot of things that come into play on what you're going to do with that one in particular kid, and passions, goal settings also kind of play into it personally.
Yeah, I like that. John,
I was just listening because I'm a Florida State fan, so I actually know what Jameis Winston did. I actually know that he threw bullpens. Cool. He threw bullpens on Sundays.
Yeah, you got to find those windows, right? You have to find those windows.
He would literally, if they were on the road or whatever, team flies back Saturday night, Sunday morning, and he would throw a late bullpen on Sunday night.
Yeah. Just beat up.
Just beat up and just to do it. Because we know, I mean, even though he's throwing a football, right? A football throw and a baseball throw are very similar, but also very different, right? It's a whole different timing mechanism to what's going on. you know. And I mean, you don't go from a football season and then straight into a baseball season. And yeah, I'm sure because he's throwing every day, so arm strength and feel is up and everything, but there's no way he's locating or spinning his slider at max efficiency, you know, like he should. So you have to retain the skill. It's what, you know, Cass and I talk about this all the time. Like, these skills are so hard to master. This is why every day, and to your point on the schedule, has to be the priority. You have to be able to understand how to do this every day. Because if you can't throw every day, right, then the skill does not come fast enough. If you're going to a pitching coach, if you're going to our man Juan here once a week, and that's all you're doing, that is the most minimum of lazy thing that you could possibly do if you call yourself a pitcher.
You know what I do with those kids? I stopped taking them. I stopped scheduling them. If I ask every kid, every session, every time, what have you done over the last 6 days? And if I find that there's a pattern that he's just coming here once a week, like, that's not invigorating to me, and I need to find a new client. And I flat out say it that way. And I don't say it to be mean. I don't say it to be a dink, but like, I want to enjoy being at work. And if I feel like we're taking steps back and we have to regain things that we did a week ago, like, go find somebody new to go. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, do either of you think there's ever a reason why we should not, like, be in a state of gaining velocity? Like, is there any reason why we should lose velocity from the age of 8 to 18?
I mean, go ahead, Juan, because I have
any reason to. That's a good question. I mean, the first thing that comes into my mind is my aggressive, like, heck no, what the hell are you talking about? You know what I mean? But like, I am a never say never type of human being. It's like, is there one circumstance that it would help? But like, I can't. Like, velo just plays, right? It just plays at the end of the day.
Well, not only that, it's so hard to stay at top end performance. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I have not stopped throwing in 11 years. Like, and I never plan. I was telling Cass the other day.
I was wondering was when the clock was going to tick over, because that's been your intent for a minute.
Yeah, we're getting close. You know, we're in the summer, but you know, I said the other day, I'm going to throw 90 till I'm 40, just because, like, I'm just tired of people saying that this thing's so dangerous to do. Because, like, no, it's not. No, it's not.
I had this conversation with a parent the other day. Do you know how many literally hours? Because since we're outside, I have to throw with the client now. I threw for 22 hours last week. 22 hours. Like, I just threw. Now, my intensity, did it vary? Yeah, of course. Going from an 11-year-old to a pro guy to a 17-year-old to a 14-year-old, it may vary. But like, the parent thought I was nuts. I'm like, that, like, I'm just still a believer. The more you do it, the more accountable you are to keep yourself in the shape to do it as well, the better off you're going to be, and like, injury free. And I'm a Tommy John guy. And like, looking back at that Tommy John, when I got it, and looking back at how I threw and what I was doing so many things incorrectly. So many things. Like, I was a ticking time bomb. You know what I mean? And now that I have much better awareness of my mind, body, spirit, how I want to structure routines for my personal body, how I want to structure my throwing program for me personally. Like, I'm like, I threw Matt makes fun of me all the time. Doesn't make fun of me. He's always just like, how are you throwing BP to like 35 guys? I'm like, this is a piece of cake. Like, I just have a good understanding of what I want to accomplish with every feed that I give these kids from 45 feet. But I'm with you. The more you throw, like, I'm kind of on the same boat. Like, I'm not 90, but like, I want to be, 85 plus. I'm 32 and I hit 88 off the bump 2 weeks ago at 32 years old.
Attaboy.
You know,
Attaboy.
You know what I mean? And it's because you just do it. You just freaking do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm 34, topped out at 93 a couple weeks ago. So, it is what it is,
Okay, so we have a kid, and this is like, I'm talking about a specific kid in my head, but like, this story is, we've had tons of these, right? Like, yeah. My elbow is really uncomfortable right now. MRIs are clean, but I just can't figure it out. And I'm over here going, it's your motion. If you keep on practicing at a lower intensity, you're going to figure it out. But it's so hard to convince people like this, right?
I
like
agree.
Even like So what are you telling people that are like I don't know. I don't even know how to have this conversation correctly because I get so jacked up right
No,
away.
I get it.
Like,
So again, back to just being fortunate with the organization I work for, like trust factor is big, where the more kids that I get to come work with me privately, the more the parents talk about my kid's arm has never felt better. So then the kids who do have those stories are more willing to just dive headfirst into what I'm trying to get them to do. You know what I mean? And like, Matt having the YouTube presence that he has, like I even get kids from I got kids from Chicago and kids from Hawaii who was flown in just like work, and like they just trust it. The second they trust you, like forget it, it's over with. They'll dive head first. But again, being fortunate enough to have those clients already talking to the other 200 players definitely plays in my favor, because there's very little convincing I have to do on my end. But again, and I get that it's difficult. Like I totally get that it's difficult when kids are coming in and out. You may see different kids this week, that week, this, that, and the fifth. And like, it's hard to get another human being to trust in what you're trying to tell them when they believe that their elbow is going to explode.
Right. So like, what's some of the protocol though that you take them through to like help them see that they're not going to die?
Oh yeah, the first thing we do like a movement screen for them. We take our camera, a slow-mo camera, and we do the movement screen with them. And like I asked them, like, hey, just throw as hard as you're comfortable with that first day. Whatever you're comfortable. Like I don't care. I don't even give them a target. I just give them a giant screen. I'm like, just effing throw. And I put them through a couple constraint drills, and I put them through a couple like movement things, shuffles, double shuffles, different things, depending on the player. Because some of these kids aren't pitchers either. And then we just sit down in front of the TV, and I tell them like that there, whatever that is, like I'm willing to bet that's why our elbow hurts a ton. I'm like, if we attack that, if you just trust me for the next 2 to 4 weeks to just attack that motion there, I promise you'll feel a little bit better. And then if we keep getting bigger and stronger, then that a little bit is going to layer into being a lot of bit better. And I try to look them directly in the face with conviction and like, this is the plan. If you trust the plan, let's start tomorrow. And typically, like I very rarely get a no. But like if they're pessimistic about it, we don't even start. I just tell them, okay, then you go home, you think about it. You can take as much time as you want, but this is what I diagnose. This is the process that I want to take. And the second that you start trusting it, let's fricking just do it and get to work. Most kids respond well to, and that's basically verbatim how I say it. And most kids kind of respond well to that, and they just say, okay, let's try it out. And they just do it. And I'm constantly asking them, like, how does that feel? How does that feel? What did you feel there? Is there pain? Is there no pain? What do you think moved first? Like if there's a sequencing issue or whatever, like, what do you think moved first? What did you feel? This, that, and the other. And we try to do video. And depending on the guy, most kids, we're going to do video every 10 to 15 throws for that first like week period to like kind of see what we're doing is working. Because I do believe in a lot of like tension work, adding tension, whether it's plyo balls, med balls, resistance bands, like you name it. We have the core velocity belt. Like I got every freaking gadget in the book. But we try to slow it down, especially in the first 2 to 4 weeks, to give them the visual of, okay, so apparently that worked. Whatever we just did over the last 30 minutes is working. So let's keep hammering that home. And then tomorrow, I want you to be super thoughtful. I want you to wake up and I want you to really think, deeply think, how does my body feel? And I need you to tell me. And I try to make it as imperative as possible. Like coach, and I'll get text at 7 in the morning. Coach, I feel like this, because I kind of make them feel like they need to do it big time, and they just follow through and they just do it. But in my opinion, being direct, no BS, especially with the parent there, like no BS, like this is what it is. This is my plan. And if you trust it, And I say it with conviction, like, this is what I want to do for you and your son. And they just go for it, and we just do it.
What is it like? Tell me a little bit more about like the program you have. Like, how do people exist
I don't
in the
have
Antonelli
one.
baseball program?
Oh, I'm sorry. So like, just the program, the Antonelli baseball in general, like what it is.
Well, yeah. So, like, do you have when you're talking about this 4-week plan? Is this a lesson plan, and then it's like with because like the thing that we've talked about is like you guys have teams, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So these kids are playing on your teams that you're doing lessons with.
Yeah, I would say about 80% of the people that come in to train are Antonelli guys.
Okay, and so what is it? So their schedule is also going to be syncing up with their lessons. Yes.
Yes, correct. Yep.
Yeah. So talk about that, because what I'm trying to allude to is like people need. You already talked about having like a very like specific schedule, and this is what people need to be planning on, right? So like if like we're not offering a team right now, right? And a lot of people are offering a team, but they're not offering the lesson, right? So a lot of people aren't marrying these things on purpose.
Yeah, you gotta do both
right?
together.
So it's like a tournament is going to take over. Like, why not just say ahead of time, hey, I'm always going to be doing lessons on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You can expect me for this, right? You don't have to deal with that when you're doing that. So tell me a little bit more about that experience with your guys' players.
So we start the first week after Thanksgiving, and then we end. Typically, we would end this week, but with what's going on, we're going later this time. But a typical year will be, let's just say for easy dates, December 1 through August 14th. That's a typical year. December 1 through mid-March, our high school guys will be like super duper structured. And all we're trying to do is get them better, whichever that individual is. We're trying to get them better. We practice team practices for a high school team. We practice Sunday, Thursday. So we already know that going into it. And then the pitcher onlys will structure their schedule around knowing that they're going to practice Sunday and Thursday. Sometimes we may have a case that a kid is going to benefit more with the private stuff versus the team stuff. So we'll just be like, don't ever worry about coming Thursdays, because that's going to be a waste of time for you. You're not going to develop as quickly because you're so far behind on certain things that you need my eyeballs or whoever's eyeballs on you more often. And then once March hits, they just go play their high school season. There's no Antonelli baseball during high school season. It's like the last thing we want them to worry about. And it's really difficult to structure a schedule for them at that point anyways, because high school coaches are changing their minds left and right on when games are going to be, practices, this, that, and the other. So we just let them do that. And the most difficult time to structure, put in lessons in a schedule is now during games. Because, for instance, our 14Us have games on Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Probably no time for a lesson at that point. So at that point, we have this giant like spreadsheet that everybody can look at, and I'll type in an individual pitcher, be like, okay, this pitcher, his pitch count is 85. If he gets to that point, then 2 days later, I need him to do this, that, and the other with his team, because I can't touch everybody during this time period, because I have my own teams to worry about. So every coach has like this document that they're able to access, and it's up to them to bring it to the games. We got a PO, he throws 85 pitches. He has his routine at the end of the 85 pitches. He goes and does it. And the most difficult part here is now just the accountability piece of it, is the expectation of having coaches follow through it, and then having the player also do it as well. Which I think is the most difficult thing with most of our high school guys, is the accountability piece. Because even Monday, Thursday, 2 private sessions in between, that's 4 out of 7 days. What the hell are we doing the other 3 days? And then those sessions are 90 minutes to 2.5 hours as well. Like, that's not enough. So we've got into a partnership, kind of like you guys, where there's a weight room. Somebody owns a gym underneath us, and we have guys like filtering in and out of the weight room, coming up to hit or pitch and stuff like that. So that's worked out well on our end too. But I think John hit this as well. Like the schedule thing is vital. Like, it is just absolutely vital. And then the next piece is to just be accountable and do it. just effing do it, because there's a lot of info out there with a lot of good coaches, but what's it worth if you're not being accountable and doing it?
Totally. We talk about the everyday and what actually everyday means, and most players don't put it together. It takes a long time for an athlete to actually become serious about one thing in particular. You know, they're told to spread their interests so far, and I was obsessed with baseball. It was a problem. You know,
Yeah.
but in the same sense, you know, it was on TV every day. You know, we didn't have DVR or anything like that. So you had to catch the game live. And my dad and I we just didn't miss games. And so I just remember, you know, watching, you know, the Braves of the 90s, the Cubs, like all of these games, and just being like, wow, like, you know, and even thinking like, well, you know, outfielders play every day pretty much. So like they got to throw every day. So like, why wouldn't you throw every day? I just never put it together. And I don't think I even had it figured out till after I got hurt too. You know, I broke my elbow. I had an involution fracture in my elbow my senior year of college. And I had 2 surgeries in 3 years, and then came back and got all the way back to 96. So, you know, when it comes to throwing, and the reason why I haven't stopped throwing in 11 years is because of the break of what happened. And just like you were saying before, where, you know, you have to be able to feel what feels right. You know, your body tells you, you know, pain is the number one indicator to what, you know, is right or wrong to me. If it doesn't feel good, you probably did something wrong. You know, and normally totally if it doesn't feel good, it's not normally accurate, and it's not normally fast. We know that pain takes away feel and strength. It's just kind of what you see people drop all the time, you know, when you hit a nerve in their shoulder or something, right? You see them react to it. And so like these reactions of things are, you know, like you were saying, it's fear and not understanding of what you're doing. And so when you can get on a routine and you can start working on these movement patterns and really dial down in every day, then you can actually do some pretty special stuff over the long run if you really hammer some of these ideas, you know? And so, you know, with these ropes, with some of these other ideas that we've started coming up with recently, I just love seeing, you know, these guys fall in love with these ideas where they actually see these things that are obtainable, like throwing 90 miles an hour, like throwing 95, like having nasty cutters and sliders and all the other things. And they start saying like, wow, okay, you know, this being good at this thing is actually something that I can do.
So
for sure.
Somebody was just asking me this morning if I'm a GOTA guy, if I like GOTA. And are you familiar, Juan?
I'm not.
I don't even know what the acronym means, but it's basically another like greatest athletes of all time. And then they're studying that and mimicking movement based on how to best move. And I always said this. I'm like, and I don't know that I could articulate it this way, but the idea of like, I'm going to jump like Michael Jordan. I'm just not going to go as high as him. And part of the reason is that I actually wasn't jumping like him, but that's the point. I'm going to try to jump like the best people that move that way. And, I just don't. I think it's so common for people to get a message that it's so much harder than that, right? Like Mike Trout just came out of the womb like that. It's like the things that kid did as a young boy. Like he's not sitting around, right? So yes, he moves unbelievably well, but he still had to condition himself to do it, right? He still had to do it like a nut, right? We have a little kid that goes by Mini Trout. And I would be very surprised if he's not one of the better athletes in California because he doesn't stop moving, right? The kid is just nonstop swing, throw, jump, swim, everything, you know? And it's like, I see a lot of people that's not how their family is. That's not how their parents are. And so they don't get this movement outside of the sports that they're in. And it's like, you don't need to get more training half the time. You just need to have movement be a part of your life. Right.
Can I just expand on that kind of randomly?
Please.
Just this popped in my head. So I don't know if either of you guys know, I have a 17-month daughter, right? She's 17 months and I have no restrictions at all. She wants to climb the bed, freaking climb it. She wants to go up the stairs. I want her to climb up the stairs. We don't have any type of cages or any type of blockades in the home at all because both her mother and I want her to, because her mother was a college athlete too. We just want her to like move. So she does some of the most reckless things you'll ever do. And for any parent watching this, like I'm right there, like ready to catch her just in case. You know what I mean? So it's not like I'm just letting her just run rampant around the apartment. But
she loves her queen size bed.
Loves it. So, every time she does a checkup and every time she meets a new person, one of the first things we hear from people are holy smokes, like she's so strong. She moves so well for her age. Like, what is happening? I'm like, we just don't stop her. We don't put any restrictions on her. What in her mind, she says, I want to climb that, and we just freaking let her do it.
How old was she when she started walking?
10 months.
Yeah, that's crazy. My mom always brags about me. She's like, Cass started walking at 10 and a half months.
10
and
months.
Then I started.
Yeah, it was probably 10 and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, so I did. I started biking without training wheels at, my mom's said 18 months. Like, I'm like, that's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. Like, people.
Well, she started doing this one thing. Where she can reach a handle. She started doing this at about 6 months. She can reach a handle, pull herself up, stand up, and then she just fall down on her butt. And she'll freaking just do it again and fall down on her butt. And we just stared at her and we're like, well, first of all, as a parent, if that's going to take up an hour of our time, like her doing that on her own, like God bless. But little things like that, like most parents, and I might be wrong here, but most parents wouldn't let their kids like just hang on a drawer. Right now, I'm there, but she wants to hang on a drawer at 6 months. She can hang on a drawer at 6 months. But we're starting to see it like really come into fruition, how well she's able to move like laterally up and down, and like she's becoming more bold too with now jumping. Like she's starting to get the jumping process where she's like coming up into her calf and then coming down into her heel, and just like you can tell that it's getting into her mind like, okay, I'm about to jump, like I'm very close. So like just to kind of say what you're saying there, kind of expand on it in a weird way.
And
like,
this is what's so fun.
Let her go.
Yeah, the ropes, you find this thing where, talking about the jump, where you're like, she knows it's right there. She's like, oh yeah, oh there it is.
Yeah.
I can. And it's the same thing with the ropes, as you see people do the ropes and you're like, huh? And then you start doing it yourself and you're like, oh, there it is. And you find, like, I've done a forward sneak. Like, I've known how to do it for almost 2 months. And like 2 days ago, I just realized how I could do it better. It's like, what the heck? It's so cool how those things happen. Right?
It is.
So anyway, I've always said this, like, we have such an advantage working with such a range of kids, because when we see what works for a 7-year-old and we know that it works for a 21-year-old, it's so helpful, right? Because then I get to say it to the 21-year-old like a 7-year-old needs to hear it. I
totally agree.
And so you think about some of the bias that somebody that's been stuck in pro ball forever, like what they might not understand because they just haven't had to make it happen with an 8-year-old, like, or even just like throwing BP to an 8-year-old. You see some of the BP that some of these big leaguers get, like that ain't working with an 8-year-old, right?
Mm-mm.
And so kids challenge us to really understand how it's going to work, because by the time they're 18, 19, 20 years old, right, they've already been molded, and you have to just like say it how you're going to say it, and they're going to have to figure it out or not. Where kids, there's so many more variables, and I don't know. I really, really enjoy learning from young kids, because they just do the weirdest things, right?
They do. I'm on the same boat.
Yeah, they're not self-conscious. I mean,
when Matt asked me to be the coach for our youngest group, our first group coming in, which is 11U, I kind of scoffed at it at first. I was like, ugh, like I've never coached at. So I don't know if you guys know, I was in college baseball for 7 years. I coached in college baseball for 7 years. I took a year off, and in that year off, that's when I met Matt. And the second I started, he's like, work with our high school guys, with our prospect guys. So I started working with the prospect guys, and I fell in love with just the player development aspect of the organization, that I said, I'm never going back to college. Like, this is awesome, right? But then this past year, for the first time, he asked me to not work with high school kids. He's like, can you work with the 11s? I'm like, golly, like in my head, I'm like, not really. No, I really don't want to. But I'm thoroughly enjoying it, because they like provide so many different aspects that I just would have never thought of if I didn't work with them. I think it's awesome.
It's yeah. And even 11's getting onto that point where they start getting a little too cool for some things. So I have my girlfriend's 5-year-old. I say this story all the time, but if it hasn't been on the internet, now it's officially on the internet. We were on a walk, and he was walking like this. And when you do that, your head stabilizes. And so that one little recognition that was a cool little move has shown me so much about every other move that I make. And I'm literally doing that nonstop now when I walk, because of course you should, right? So the twisting out of the foot like that's the strongest way you could be, right? Do you know that some of the kids who bounce when they walk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
okay, so John was talking about, and some kids are like real extra, like their calves are on all the time.
Yeah.
Right? But then you also have kids who just like, they don't normally bounce, but when they get excited or when they're like, yeah, I got this, they'll start being a little more bouncy. That's the glute firing and getting them to kind of torque out the foot. And so that's how you move forward, by the way. That's how you move sideways. That's how you move all the ways, is you close up your joint and then you open it up. And you don't see a lot of college players walking around doing that on purpose. Now, what's cool then is now you have to have the abstraction if you're a college player to see these things, right? You have to go, hey, I'm really good at dancing and I suck at throwing. That doesn't make any sense, right? Like, I'm not applying this information to my stuff. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent there, but I just get so excited because of their naivety, right? And they're just like wonder with everything. You learn so much about throwing. Even, I've learned so much about, I didn't train a lot of young kids in Minnesota. I was like, if you're under 10 years old, like, you really have to be serious about this. And we have so many 8 and 9-year-olds, and we have some 6 and 7-year-olds too that will come in from time to time. But what you see is the anxiety of the throw, right? So it's like, what do kids, and I won't go too deep into this, but I've talked about this many times on the show. The game of catch is like 8th grade reading level, right? So for a kid, kids can throw the ball now, right? Them catching a ball is going to take so much longer for them to understand how to do that, right? So a game of catch is horribly inappropriate to teach somebody to learn how to throw, right? So you get them in front of a target and you say, hey, go throw this as hard as you can at that, or like throw it to me. But their catching comes way after that. So when we teach them to do that and they don't have to worry about catching it, they learn how to throw so much faster at a really young age, right? Because they're not hampered by the other parts of the game of catch.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's really interesting. I've never worked with anybody under the age of 11, so like, I've never had to.
So I'm gonna jump in. Like, it's so obvious to me that so I don't remember exactly where I saw this. I think it was HBO or somewhere like that, maybe a Real Sport or something like that. But they were talking about tennis academies in France and how these tennis academies are getting 3 and 4-year-olds, and now you have these. Like the Premier League, where they have their training camps for these young kids starting at 3 or 4. And Manchester City was one of the organizations that was really into that. I remember seeing them on Amazon about that. But one of their guys who was 16 had basically at 16 reached the velocities, the run. I guess they do running speed in soccer. I guess which would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Right. Right? Like, there's like, they have way more metrics, and it's like running speed, kick speed, and all this stuff. Well, they had a 16-year-old basically be big enough and strong enough to be able to play in the Premier League. And they all talked, he was too young, he didn't have the skill level, this and that. Well, this kid's holding his own. It's like 3 years now. So he's 19. I can't imagine 10 to 12 years from this when this kid actually is in the game for as long as he is. And it's just going to be he's just going to be one of the greatest of all time. And I think about Trout, I think about Griffey, I think about all these kids, Andrew Jones, like all of these dudes who came up, right, at like super young. And, that inside of the game of baseball, that of course they failed at the beginning. It's a whole different animal. 10 years into it, they're just be like, yeah, I've seen the entire game. And once you see the entire game, like, no wonder why Pujols is still hitting bombs at 40. Like, he don't want to run hard. He wants to hit it over the
slowest
fence,
guy
jog around
to play baseball.
Exactly. And you can tell he's doing it on purpose because he's got, if you think about it, what did Pujols have issues with? He had major plantar fasciitis. He had major hip and knee issues, right? So he's got to gingerly ice skate over, around everything to keep his health because he knows he's putting so much torque on that body when he's ripping the bat.
Dude, and I've never thought about it. We think about him as like the GOAT, but I didn't think about that part. He's too closed. His hip joints are too closed. Now it's great for pop, but he never goes open, right? So he if you look at Trout's knees are like really out, right? His feet are locked in and torqued, but like that was everybody. I just met a kid the other day. Who are you trying to be? Pujols. Like, bro, you're like 16. You're trying to be an old man? But and that's not fair, right? But it's like a lot of people have mimicked him. I mean, freaking Tewksbury, how many times did he talk about it? Teacher man, like everybody's talked about Pujols, and then I've never drawn that correlation of like he's probably had all those because he's too pigeon-toed.
Yeah, because no one ever told him to jog like A-Rod out to short,
Right. Yeah. But seriously, right?
A-Rod's jog was just such a thing. I remember seeing like when I was in high school, like you could tell there was a kid that was just like, dude, this, high socks, wristbands, sunglasses, eye black, and then here comes the A-Rod jog. And he's just like, looks like he's jogging in slow motion all the way.
Right,
up. He's making these like giant bounding steps to everything. You're like, look at this kid. What was this kid doing? But, now learning what we're learning, Cass, I don't remember who said this, but I really, really liked it to describe athleticism. But like some of the best athletes in the game are the laziest movers. And it just looks like they're just not even trying. And that's what I think about with A-Rod jogging out to short is like, he's literally just like, how little effort can I put into this and just ride momentum? You know what I'm saying?
And think of the Mannies, right? Machado and Manny Ramirez.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
So it's like, we're all grinding. I mean, Doug Latta talks about this, like, quit grinding. Why are we grinding right now? Right? Let's remove that hashtag. Let's cancel that hashtag because it's like you should really, really try to not do anything. I always think of Forgetting Sarah Marshall where Paul Rudd's just like, do less. It's like, I'm not moving. Yes, less. Yeah, you're doing too much. I'm sitting here. Yep, too much. Less is more. But it's so true. And
Well, I was going to say, so one more thing to Cass, like along the A-Rod thing, the pulsars, right? The little shakers, we call them maracas, represent momentum in locomotion. I know, but like just joke about them. You know what I mean?
I know.
But that's where it made sense, where I was like, oh, okay, I see. Like it's just an auditory response to like confirming what locomotion is inside of your run. And so like we see these kids with heavy feet. Right. And we see these kids that you can hear them coming around the corner when they're running. Right. Because no one ever said, like, have you ever tried to be as floaty and like have as much momentum when you're running? Have you ever tried that? Like, and
it's so true, though.
You know what I'm saying? Like, no one ever said that.
That's so true.
And it's like,
so true.
And if you think about coaching and what happens, like the sarcastic level of coaching and how negative they only identify the problem, it's the worst thing to ever happen. Where they just go, you're heavy, you're slow. Stop doing that.
Yeah, you have big feet. Big feet's always a good one.
Right? The kid's got the creative capacity of a freaking crayon and has no idea what you're talking about. He has no clue. So you literally, like we're saying with 7-year-olds, you have to tell them what to do. You have to be like, see, if you like jump and bound like a deer when you're running, it's actually easier just to move. So
just to move, right.
Like we're not even talking about running. We're just talking about moving. Right. And so you get these kids to understand these concepts at an earlier age. And of course, the Premier League produces a 60-year-old monster. The kid's been in the program for 12 years. Right. So like it makes sense. I'm like, oh, yeah.
I don't know where I saw this because I follow so many freaking movement people. But do you know who the soccer player Ibrahimovic is?
I don't.
No.
Okay. So he's like the only reason I know this because my ex had an Ibrahimovic jersey. She was a soccer player. And anyway, he's 40, and somebody just posted a video of him going like, how do you go like in like what do you do? Like where you're just collapsing in all the way down to the ground. He did that knees to the ground at 40 years old and then just stood straight back up like a breakdancer. Like, and it's like, well, why is he still in the game? He's one of the highest paid soccer players ever, just because he's been playing forever. And I mean, that's so just, I hear the opposite end of it from John, right? It's like, I'm not talking Jamie Moyer right now. I'm talking like LeBron. I'm talking MJ. I'm talking the guys that did it forever really, 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 really well.
That's one of the, it's funny that you said that too, because one of the things I took from The Last Dance, I'm not sure if you've seen it, Juan, but
I did. I watched it.
His team around him just makes so much sense to the reason why he's the best. You know, he had all of the rehab people, but he didn't trust the Bulls, which makes so much. He literally didn't trust the information and the help that he was going to get from him, so much so he had his own team outside of the Bulls, whether rehab, strength and conditioning, and he brought the team in. You know, when they start winning that first three-peat, you know, he's like, no, you know what? I'm going to bring my guys in because I actually think their information's better, and we're going to educate the Bulls. We're going to teach Scotty and Pippen and all of, you know, and Rodman, and you know, you got to be stronger. You got to be faster. And so he just, you know, that extra gear of float when he jumps makes so much sense to me, because all he ever worked on was his jumping capacity, you know, and going through it. And if you go to his trainer, I'm not sure, remember what his name is, but I can't imagine this guy hasn't been doing this forever.
Oh, for sure. I think those are like different implements when we watch different things like that. And I think why I really enjoyed the things that you guys do is that you just always bring it back and you just give it straight to the young kids. And kind of going back to what you said with the Manchester United guy, and then Cass has been talking about, you know, teaching kids from the point that they're 7, just like all of these concepts just keep adding onto the layers that they're going to have their entire lives. And like you said, by the time that hopefully they play college baseball, they're going to look, because one of the biggest problems with college baseball today, I get these programs from kids. They're like, hey, this is the program that we're doing for the summer. I look at the program and it's so just cookie cutter black from like some of the best programs in the country. I'm like, what is that? Like, no. And I get this question from a parent, like, how do you get connected with like all these D1 guys? I'm like, well, name recognition, Matt helps, right? But the second they start working with me and we start just kind of breaking the mold of what is cookie cutter in the game of baseball, and I start asking them to do like weird stuff, they actually like start enjoying it. They're so cerebral, right, with what they're doing, that when you ask them to do all these weird motions and act in a certain way, going back to the jump rope or, you know, yoga stuff, and I start putting them into yoga poses, I'm like, all right, throw, figure it out. You know, it like just stimulates them. And I'm just, again, it's just a huge believer in just getting kids to move in so many different ways that's just going to benefit them going forward 1,000,000%, tenfolds.
Yeah, and I know that, like, you know, we heard it a lot at the ABCA, and obviously we've had a ton of conversations since, but like, it's obvious that the industry understands this, right? So the vets in our game are teaching people to move better and are having assessments, you know, as something that is pretty typical with people coming in. But I just think it's so, I just, and this is probably for the younger parents, just I suppose high school and younger, to be honest, is like, it actually doesn't need to be so prescriptive, right?
Yeah.
If you're hearing somebody telling you like, hey, you got a weak core, so go work on that. It's like, why do I have a weak core? What are you talking about? Like, and you've alluded to this either. John said just like identifying the problem, but I just don't think it's like, I don't think it's that simple. If you have a weak core, you probably have a weak right leg and a weak left leg and a weak right arm and a weak left arm.
Yeah.
And like, you probably have all the things that are weak, and they probably don't know how to move together. Because I know that yes, it has helped that I have done strength and conditioning for a long time. But like, I'm not necessarily that good at being strong. That is just something that's recently really started making sense to me, right? The ropes have helped me. My friend Jason just simplifying things into open the joints and close the joints. These things have helped me at 31 realize how I can be stronger. It's not me training to be stronger. And I'm looking forward to this conversation I'm going to have with my friend Sam Topping, because I'm like, hey, are we training to be strong? Or are we training to be strong in weak positions, because I want to be strong because of the positions I put myself in, right? So if I'm going to punch you in the face, that I want to know where that's coming from. I want to be in control of my movements, like know why I'm choosing to use my right leg and my right arm to punch you in the face rather than using my left leg and my right arm to punch you in the face, right? I want to decide that, and I would say I'll take it a step further. It's like you see football players doing this. How many hours and hours and hours do they study of film? They're literally learning the technique of when that guard does this as a middle linebacker, I'm going to react exactly this way. Like you have other people training movement like that, recognizing that you can do it. And it's just so weird that we make it so much more complicated in our sport. So,
well, it's because some of the this is a problem. Some of the pro guys, they're in certain organizations and they tell me what they're doing in spring training and what the clubs are asking them to do. Like the teams that are really good right now, to me, there's no surprise that they're really good. Just dive into how they run, dive into their hitting coordinator, pitching coordinator, and strength and conditioning coordinator and how they run things. And that will tell you exactly why they're so good at developing players. And I don't know, I don't want to mention like teams, but like I hear what certain teams do. I'm like, no wonder you can't develop guys. It's not a skill thing. It's not a talent thing. It's just that it gives the game a bad rap because now those people that are quote unquote developing players in those organizations branch out and talk to parents and other people talk to other people. And it just spirals into saying, well, that organization does this, so we're going to do that, even though they're doing it so poorly.
Right. And I also think it's obvious when people are just copying. And the problem with copying is you never, ever get it right. Your interpretation is always wrong. We are all guilty of this. There's no way avoiding that, and so you have to create something like that is genuine and unique to you.
And organic.
Yes, totally.
If you can come off organically to your players, even the worst program, they'll get results with. Like totally. Even the worst. I say that all the time. Like there are certain things I mentioned this. I think I posted a comment on John's Instagram once. You guys call it K throws. When I was in college, we did them all the time. We just called them tension throws, right? But you guys have opened my eyes 2 or 3 steps even further on why we did it. So it's like it felt. Now I look back, I'm like, all right, it almost feels like my pitching coach just liked the drill, didn't know what it was for, just called them tension throws, and we just did it, and he was copying somebody, while you guys have like this true understanding of why we do it and how we do it. And then the more I started following what you guys were doing, I'm like, oh my God, this is why I was doing this between 2007 and 2010. These are the reasons why. It's not like, all right, you just need to go out there and do 8 K throws. Then it's just, I'm totally with you with the whole copying aspect of it. It's just, it can't be just like this binder that we just open up and be like, oh, that's it. That's what we got to do.
And I say that kind of speaking out of both sides of my mouth, because I'll also say, and I don't care about organizations. So like the Minnesota Twins, being a Minnesota guy, I knew minor leaguers in the Twins organization. I worked for Gene Larkin, like 2 times World Series champion. He can go sit in the game whenever he wants, right? Freaking royalty. And it's like I knew what was going on. And I think it's the Levine. That might be a reporter. I'm terrible with names like this. But whoever they hired from Cleveland at the front office back 3-4 years ago, that was immediately when he started hiring people who knew what they were doing, right? They got a ton of Eric Cressy guys. They had people like it just made so much sense how they were like doing this. And then obviously the Wes Johnson hire, right? Like all of this stuff, it's like they're just simply putting people who have already been competent in positions where you need to be competent. And it's really scary to me to see that it's still happening at the big league level where they do not see this, or they're just copying.
So many teams, they're copying the lack of communication, the greed within coaching staffs of trying to attach their name onto a player. Like you can just keep going on and on and on. And it's like, no wonder that organization can't effing produce a player from its minor league system.
Well, and think about what the kind of baseball that is birthed out of that, because what is going to be, okay, so let's say you're not in baseball one, okay? And you have a son and he's 10 years old and there's a camp. You're going to the frickin' Boston Red Sox camp, aren't you? Or wherever you're going, right?
Yeah.
It's the New York Yankees. It's whatever your hometown team is. Like, you're going to believe that. Like, when I was a kid, going to a Twins camp was the coolest sounding thing ever. I had a buddy who went, worst best friend, John. Worst best friend went to the Minnesota Gophers camp. Minnesota Gophers haven't been relevant in baseball for like hundreds of years until like 2 years ago when they decided to and it was seriously, it was like they hired, I don't need to name names, but they were hiring people who were driveline guys. They were informed, they cared. And that's all it took, you know. And,
isn't it wild?
But the point is like that will permeate an entire like industry, that will permeate an entire like region of the country, right? The Minnesota Twins, what you have the Brewers, you have the Twins, you have the Cubs, and then like where are the Dakotas going, right? Where's Montana, Wyoming? Like, who are they following? Like, so it's just like that is huge. These kind of ideas are going to have a huge impact on it, and the financial repercussions of these things. This is what I don't get. It's your hometown. So if you have the best people in the game being your coaches, then you should give that information to the people in your region of the world, because we all know we're all stupid enough to screw it up and steal it anyway. So give it to the people so you have a better chance of your region producing people that are good. Like, it's just so, it makes too much sense to me that I don't understand how they haven't made this connection earlier, because financially it's irresponsible for them not to care more about development because of them thinking of the product 15, 20 years down the road. Doesn't make any sense.
No, I totally agree. And it might
be 5 years, right? The implications of that can be 5 years. Who is the Seattle Mariners guy that just made his debut after pitching in Minnesota? Did you see that thing on Pitchers Nation?
No.
Dude was pitching in amateur baseball in Minnesota 4 years ago, and he just made his debut for the Mariners, right? So what can happen in 5 years with just better information? The kid obviously trained, right?
Did you see his motion too, by the way?
Yeah, that's goofy.
Right? It's the full-on, like, from the hip, weird, like, hunching 93 coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, it's full-on different angle, you know? So you got to go check it out.
That can only happen in Minnesota, where it's just, it's crazy because. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just up here in the Northeast, I think one of the more sorry excuses that you hear up here is that, well, we don't produce players because of the weather, which I say BS to 100%. I think you guys are from Southern California, right? So you guys produce players left and right. And the fact that people up here want to blame the weather for not producing players blows my mind, because I swear, if we flew you guys here and we just quietly entered baseball facility after baseball facility after baseball facility, you would not leave and say New England doesn't produce baseball players because of weather. New England doesn't produce baseball because they're baseball players because they're stuck in like 1955. You know, like it's the biggest pet peeve I have when I talk to people from up here, because really the only players that we produce are arms, and it's just like randomly you might have a kid who's 95, and it's just because he exists to be 95 and he's from New England, and we're like, oh great, you know, we just produced the guy. It's like, no, you didn't produce anything. Like, he just that just kind of happened. Like, we have a kid right now, his name's Thomas White. He's the #1 player in the country for freshman high school. He's a left-hander. He's 95. The kid was 91 miles an hour as an 8th grader. He just sprouted. Like, if you saw him and you saw the people that he worked with and stuff like that, like, it's just coincidental. Like, we're going to have all this pride because this kid's the #1 kid in the country, but we're not coaching him up to the point that he needs to be. But like, that's the biggest cop out here is we don't produce guys because the weather isn't good enough. It's like, no, we don't produce guys because we don't care enough to change our ways to coach guys in a better, more efficient way to produce players.
Sounds like you need us to come out there,
dude. I would,
but it's everywhere though, right? It's everywhere,
exactly,
and so here there's just the kids are just playing more, so they're better here because they play more. Like, it's that simple. The information is almost as bad.
Well, and you know what? Honestly, you know, I think we pulled a little one over your eyes, Juan, because neither one of us are from Southern California. I'm from Florida and he's from Minnesota. So we're transplants to the area. And so we have a different lens from what it is. And so, you know, it's interesting. San Diego's the #1 baseball market in the country, but it's not based on training. It's based on games played, which if you think about it, like, what are we talking about?
Yeah, that's really
like,
interesting. So then the conversation then switched to, well, then how many more can we have?
exactly.
You
right.
know?
And so that's what it is. That's why everybody, and there is a factor to experience there, right? There's, if you play 25 games a year and you play 250 games a year, obviously there's going to be a little bit of a different thing. But to your point, like you're saying, it's not like New England doesn't produce people.
Right.
And so what is the actual answer to becoming, good to the game, right?
Okay, but this is how many kids like this. This is what I was talking about at the beginning of the podcast. When's a good time to take a break? And it's like, well, in the winter, right? And that's what people do. And it's like, no, that's a terrible idea. So you can now be like struggling to find your feel in your arm and your pitches by the time your first game happens in March and April. It's like it just makes zero sense. It's so catastrophic.
Or exactly when we hear, I heard a college kid the other day ask me a question about throwing, and he came back with, well, I've been really grinding, all the way up until now, and I just got back from my summer season, so I'm going to take like a month to 6 weeks off and really just, let the body recover and go back. And I looked him dead in the eyes and I said, could be the worst mistake you've ever made. Just want to tell you right now, from a guy who did the month to 6 weeks off, and then had the reprogramming issue happen, and then got swindled, and then never got it back, right? Went complete. Look at it exactly as the thing. I know the conversation I had with my college head coach my senior year. I remember it to the T about, you had a lot of innings. We need to calm you down. We need to give you the time, let your body recover, get into some rehab stuff. It sounded great. Didn't happen. Didn't work. And then how many guys do you know, Juan? Shut it down. And then what happened?
Dude, their arms blow up.
Yeah.
Their arms just blow up. It's just and just like the process that one of the big things around here is guys don't ramp up properly, and then they just want to be 100% ready to rock on day one without doing anything leading up to that point. And we have guys that I work with that come in, and I do a Q&A with everybody. And it's like, wait, so you have the aspirations to be a Division I player, but you just took 8 weeks off because you want to recover from what? Like 20 innings over the summer? Like, huh? And like you said, now, since you have that information, you have those experiences, you can look that kid square in the face and say, that may be the worst mistake you're going to make,
And you got to live with it, buddy.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you keep your arm in midseason form all the time? Like, why would
all the time?
Like, I don't understand, like, where when you feel the best, like, right, when you can go 120, 150 pitches,
I had
and
a
you're
coach
like,
argue with me. I had another trainer argue with me and like tell me that I was being unsafe because I implement 100% days in like December. And he's like, what are you doing? That's not the way you're doing. You're going to hurt these guys. Blah, 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 blah. And like, I mean, once, every kid may be different, but once he's physically fit and ramped up properly, like, why the heck not? That's what I kind of responded. Like, why the heck? You tell me why not? If he's ready to do it, and we worked for 6 to 8 weeks, let's just say, to get him to this point where we can implement multiple 100% days into our weeks, like, what's the negative here? What is it? You're asking a power lifter to take an 8-week period off and just, ask him to pull 600 pounds out of meat after. Like, no, that's not how it works.
It's so funny. I love that you said power lifter. We have a friend, Cass and I do, from the previous gym they were at. Her name is Karina, and she goes by Quadzilla. Okay, on Instagram.
Oh,
she's
wow.
amazing.
Okay.
She's amazing. She's a world record holder in bench and squat. And for the time that we were at this previous gym, it was, impressive to be like, okay. She would finish a competition and 2 days later be right back in there prepping and being ready for another one. But she'd also be destroyed, from that competition of, deadlifting 700 pounds and squatting, 500. It was crazy watching her do these feats. But knowing what the taxation that goes into the body, to produce that kind of output, how exhausted she is, like, to me, I'm like, oh, you just had an extended start. You threw 130, 150 pitches. You got to come in, do your stuff. start moving around, start getting things to feel better, figure out maybe something went wrong in the lift, or maybe went wrong in the outing, and you started feeling something in the hips. So you got to feel it and try to get back to it, so a lot of that powerlifting idea, and there was a West Side Barbell documentary that I watched a long time ago, and it just made so much sense. And that's actually how we do a lot of our programming, is with the conjugate method with 120-50. And it's just so easy to get kids around that RPE idea, where it's like, today's a 20% day, as in 20% of your power. You may not throw 20% of your velocity, like it's really hard to throw 22 miles an hour consistently, right? But you kind of understand what that idea is, right? Maybe stay under 60 miles an hour today on your throws and just kind of easily get through it, So the more, like we were saying, the more education we can put in this, the better.
No, 100% with you, and just keep throwing, guys. If anybody's still listening, like, keep throwing, just keep doing it.
All right, Juan. Well, listen, we've attacked this far beyond what we were going to. We're at 1 hour 25 minutes now. So,
hey, whatever.
It was a great conversation. We got to do this again. Real quick, why don't you let everybody know at home, how they can follow you, where you're at, location-wise, obviously with Antonelli Baseball.
Yep.
But just help us out.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm with Antonelli Baseball. So you can go to AntonelliBaseball.com. There's a work with us tab there if you did want to work with us, and you can follow me on basically any social platform. Just type in Juan Cero. That's my handle just about everywhere, and it's just my first name, and the last part is CERO, and that comes because I wore the number 10 in college, so everybody just called me that.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, guys, he's a great follow. Posts some amazing content. We've reached out, communicated enough. I'm glad we've had this conversation extensive. It seems like we a lot have the same ideas about all this stuff. So it's always great to get a like-minded guy that we've never met from the other side of the country, that weirdly we're all saying the same thing.
It's a beautiful thing. And I super appreciate it.
I love the internet now these days, because, as much as you want, everybody to learn everything, it's just really hard to fight a lot of these old ideas and a lot of these movement ideas and throwing ideas and programming ideas that to your Tommy John experience, to my elbow, to Cass's shoulder, we've all been through some weird stuff that people told us that didn't exactly make sense. So I think our experiences on this are valuable to people, and I appreciate you coming on here and just dropping some knowledge for us.
No, thank you very much. This was awesome.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Don't forget to check out Cutternation.net. If you have any other questions, check out our online store. Please rate, review, and subscribe, and smash the like button if you like this. You can find this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, all the good stuff. So we'll tag you guys in some stuff from there. Appreciate it, man. Juan, tell Antonelli we said hi as well. We had him on also.
I will.
We should get him back on too, because his audio was all
for
janky.
Sure.
So you're going to sound real crystal clear, Juan. So appreciate it again. Thank you very much, man.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.